Good evening, everyone. It is Friday, August the 2nd, 2019. It is currently 6:39 p.m. Central Time. Now, this is a live broadcast for the VBC 66 app, And before we really get started, I'm going to do something. I'm opening the door, leaving the area where I record, and I'm doing something that you should give me thanks for. I am taking the phone and moving the phone to another part of the house. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, you should have done that before you started. Well, I probably should have, but once again, I prove that I constantly forget to move the phone. And for those this is your first time listening, you have no idea what's going on. Previous live broadcasts, let's just say, have been interrupted by the telephone. So I thought I would make a big production out of moving the phone so that you won't have to worry about that. Now, who knows? Something else could happen, but at least that is done. So let's do this the correct way. Welcome, everyone. It is Friday, August the 2nd, 2019. It is 6:40 p.m. Central Time right now. This is a live broadcast for the VBC 66 app. For those who will hear a recording of all of this, if you would like to hear live broadcast when they actually take place, it's very simple. Go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Do a search for VBC 66. VBC stands for Victory Baptist Church. The number 66 stands for the number of books in the Bible. VBC 66. Download the app. It's absolutely free. When you download the app, there's a couple of things I would tell you to pay close attention to. I think it's in the Food for Thought section. I posted an interview with the director of the movie American. Let me see give me a second. I'm going to have to look to make sure I give you the correct title. Give me 1 second. I'm opening the VBC 66 app. Here we go. There's the notification for the live broadcast. Food for Thought section. Food for Thought section. American Gospel. Yes, American Gospel. It is a film, and I think it's available through Amazon. I think you can buy it through Amazon. You may be able to rent it through Amazon Prime Video as well. It's called American Gospel. I am going to try to watch it soon, but there was an interview about the movie, and I posted that in the Food for Thought section, so you can definitely listen to that. Also, all of this week, we have been listening to the Discover the Word radio program, as they give us their handling of the greatest commandment to love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. I have been playing all of this week's programs for everyone. Not that we agree or that I agree, but I've been playing it so that you can hear kind of a modern evangelical take on it. And we could raise a lot of interpretive questions. I won't go all the way back into that. I posted my discussion about that at the beginning of this. But please listen to all of those and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about their hermeneutic, how they handle that commandment. Is that a right way? Is that a wrong way? There's plenty of things about the broadcast we could complain about, considering the woman leading the discussion is a female pastor. But we want to look more at the hermeneutic and how they're handling it more than anything else. And I don't like to take people's words out of context. So I've played their entire week of discussion. So whatever conclusion we come to, no one can blame us for ripping their words out of context or misrepresenting them. So definitely listen to all of that. All right, it is Friday evening. Now, this has been one of those days where, and I like to share this kind of information because I like people to realize that these live broadcasts, it's really mainly for the people who are using the VBC 66 app, but we're kind of a little family, a little group of individuals, hopefully all trying our best to live out this thing we call the Christian life, trying our best to live out our Christian life and to follow the scriptures. And we all have similar struggles. And one of those struggles is we live in a world where there's 9 billion distractions and 9 billion things that you can do Monday through Friday to take you away from time in God's Word. And this has been one of those days where I have greatly struggled with my devotional time. Now, typically I try to have morning devotional, afternoon devotional, evening devotional, late night devotional. And this has been one of those days where I've just struggled. There's been so many other things that I've wanted to do. And there were some things I had to do. And you just add all of that together, it's kind of been one of those days. But I was sitting here. I have a plan for all these things I need to do tonight. And I thought, you know what? I need to stop and force myself to have my devotional time. I need to stop and force myself to have my devotional time. So as I always do, whenever I can, I should say, I always do it when I can. I grab the iPad and hit go live so that I can have my devotional time with all of you. Now, for those who are new, I say this every single time, but I have to do this because new people always get confused. This is not a devotional study where I sit down, plan it all out, write it all out, organize it, have 3 points, make it all nice and neat like a typical radio program, well produced. No. This is very organic and real. I'm in my study. All right? I'm in my study. I'm not in a studio. I have my Bible open and I'm going to have my devotional time in real time live on the air. And that's the way I like to do it. Some people have voiced their displeasure with how I do it. But you know what? For those who don't like it, there is a great option. You don't have to listen. I prefer that you do. And I prefer that you see maybe there's something nice about doing it this way. But I do understand it. It does lead to sometimes not as clear presentation as a fully developed study that someone puts together, but it's very real. And this really kind of places the devotional thought and idea in your hands for you to do some work on it as well. Now, you've been listening to all the live broadcast this week. We've been spending a lot of time in the Gospel of Matthew. That's where we return this Friday evening. So if you have a Bible, Matthew chapter 13, I'm going to take the iPad that I'm speaking into and place it down on its holder, the stand that I have for it. And I'm going to grab my Bible and I'll speak up a little bit because I'll be further away from the iPad. Hopefully the sound quality will be okay. Matthew chapter 13, and we're going to be looking at verses 54 to 58. Matthew chapter 13, verses 54 to 58. Now, there is a verse in this section that has proven to be extremely controversial within certain circles of Christianity. I think in some ways it's controversial for everyone, but there are radically different approaches to how to handle this verse. And whenever I see that, it always bothers me because once again, you would hope that Christians who all claim that the Bible is the final authority, that if we're all reading the same book, we could all come to relatively close to the same conclusions. But that's just not reality. Now, I think part of the problem is people don't know hermeneutics. They don't actually utilize hermeneutical methods and ideas to interpret the Bible correctly. And they just read it and interpret it any way they want, which I think is a horrible thing and should be condemned by everyone. But it is a constant problem. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at this passage and I'm going to try to walk us through it. I'm going to try to let the passage establish some parameters. Now, I think this is important. There is one verse here that's very controversial, but before we get to the controversial verse, the passage that leads to it, I hope you will see that one of the things that's important is to allow the scriptures to establish the interpretive parameters. And what I mean by that is sometimes the text itself will give you the parameters to say any interpretation that goes outside these parameters is just patently false because the text will not allow it. Now, within the parameters, there may be 3 or 4 interpretations, but at least you have 3 or 4 that are at least plausible within the parameters set up by the text itself. The text itself creates interpretive parameters. You have to establish those parameters and go, okay, these are our only 3 choices. And someone raises their hand and go, no. I think I can interpret it this way. And you're like, well, wait a minute. That's not allowed according to the parameters of the text itself. I hope that makes sense. It's a very important. Now that I'm thinking, I should have done a live hermeneutics broadcast, not for the VBC section of all of our podcasts, but for the Hermeneutics 101 podcast. But we're stuck now. We've already started, so this is going to be a VBC podcast. So here we go. Matthew chapter 13, verse 54. Now this is speaking of Jesus. I'll go to verse 53 for greater context. And it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these parables, now we've read some of those parables this week, and I've given you some devotional thoughts on them, some very important things to consider and some very convicting things. But after he finished these parables, he departed thence. Again, speaking of Jesus, he departs. And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished, and said, Whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? All right, so he comes into his home country, he begins to teach, and they are astonished. They are blown away. Verse 55, Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brother James, and Joseph, and Simon, and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? All right, they hear Jesus teaching, and they're like, look, where did he get all these things? This is just the carpenter's son. We know his mom, we know his family. Who is this guy? Like, the text clearly demonstrates they do not perceive him to be Messiah or the Son of God. They don't perceive that in any way, shape, or form. They perceive him just to be a guy, the son of a carpenter. We know his mom, we know his family. So they're kind of baffled. Where did he get all of this? How is he teaching this? But they clearly don't believe or perceive or accept him being anything other than the carpenter's son. Verse 57. And when they were offended in him, clearly that seems to imply it goes beyond just confusion. They're offended. There's a rejection here. But Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and in his own house. Now, we could work on that phrase right there, but that's not what I want to focus on for this devotional study. Verse 58 is where we have to go, because this is the verse where all the controversy exists. And he, speaking of Jesus, did not many mighty works. Okay, let me read this again. And he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Jesus did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Now, let's set up the controversy. Within Christianity, there is a branch of Christianity that we would have to label, to be fair, the charismatic branch of Christianity, and all of its different forms. Now, there's extreme manifestations of the charismatic movement. There's more moderate versions. There's more mild versions. But it's all a part of this thing we'll call the charismatic movement. And one of the hallmarks of the charismatic movement is a belief that we should just not believe that it can happen, that we believe it should happen, that it would be the norm. The normative Christian life is filled with miracles and signs and wonders and healings, etc., etc., etc. Many within the charismatic world would go so far to say that when it comes to divine healing, that this is not something that we should say, Lord, if it be your will. They would argue it is his will. And that by what Jesus did on the cross, not only did he bring spiritual healing for our sin, but by his stripes, there is the guarantee of physical healing here and now. And all that we have to do is name it, claim it, believe it, and by faith it is yours. And if you do not experience that miracle, if you do not experience that healing, it is because you did not have enough faith. And they will quote Matthew chapter 13.